Sports Roundtable.
What up, what up, what up? It's Sports Roundtable. Thanks for tuning in. We are in hour number 2. Our brother is in the building. 92.9 The Game's own DeShaun Tate.
What up, though? That's how we say it up there. When Sparty get a big win over the Loserines, that's how we say it. What up, though?
What up, though?
You know what I'm saying? They asked for their fancy Nancy coach and all their cute uniforms with the Jordan logo on it. And they said they wanted a night game, so we gave them a night game. 8-2 in the last 10 years. But forget about all that. What up? What up?
Hey, man, everything good? Listen, the NBA is back. But more importantly, if the NBA is back, guess what else is back? Within a week, within a couple of weeks, you got some teams, Midnight Madness, they call it their own thing now, but we gonna still call it Midnight Madness. But more importantly, Tate, then you can follow Tate on at Tate's Tate Sports on social media. So make sure you follow him on all social media platforms. But one of the icons in college basketball, and then, college basketball is the bread and butter here. One of the icons got caught up in a situation with the allegations, the FBI coming into college basketball, arresting 4 assistant coaches and things of that nature. But now one of the icons, Rick Pitino, has finally been fired. So I just want to kind of get your thoughts on that and how will that affect college basketball moving forward.
I'm not a legal expert or anything like that, but I will say in regards to the allegations and the multiple infractions that's come down from the NCAA as well as from the FBI, I'm kind of wondering, why does it seem like everybody is so surprised? I mean, from a personal standpoint, is this really surprising to anybody? Are we just kind of being informed of something that we kind of already knew or at least had already thought? And it's unfortunate, for the sport of college basketball as a whole. But I think that in the end, it will definitely, if not nothing else, clean the game up a little bit in terms of recruiting, make it at least a little bit more fair. How much, we can't really say exactly, but I will say enough to say that it's going to make it a little bit more. It's going to make it a little bit more interesting, especially for what I like to think potentially for specific programs. You got a lot of transfer programs that a lot of guys consider. You have your Gonzagas and I mean you have a lot of just different Wichita State. I mean the list goes on and on, but. A lot of these programs are transfer programs. They'll probably, quote-unquote, clean programs. Sometimes I wonder what it'll even do for some of the programs here in the state of Georgia where a lot of people don't necessarily, or may consider, but don't necessarily get the commitment, that are, quote-unquote, clean programs. Georgia Tech. Will some of these cleaner programs get some guys? I mean, the state of Georgia is an underrated hotbed for years. There's a lot of guys that are top, products that come from here, football, NBA, NFL, that go other places and they don't stay home. I mean, not as much, Georgia and football and stuff like that, but when you're talking about Georgia basketball, Georgia Tech basketball, Josh Pastner doing a good job to try and get them back over the hump and get them back to where they used to be. But overall, I think that instead of talking about how sad people are, instead think about how it can benefit and the quality of the game from that standpoint, even on the NBA level. Is it something that's going to be forced to put the one and done rule to rest?
The hurting of the recruiting. How does this affect the recruiting moving forward? Because now, if this is just the beginning, it's going to be some schools like maybe Wichita State, Xavier, Cincinnati, things of that nature, where there's possibilities that the playing field can get a little more even if you got the right type coach that can actually coach these kids up. So, in your opinion, how do you think it will affect recruiting?
Potentially that could be the case, but I don't think that there's really a solution here, because even if people say, go on and pay these kids, there's always going to be the issue of who's got the biggest bag. You know, they say, okay, we're going to pay these kids, I'm just throwing a ballpark figure out there, $5,000 a season or $5,000 each semester. There's always going to be that coach that say, hey, how much they giving? That's legal, $5,000? How about I give you $25,000? And this kid, Brian Bowen, is a kid that picked Louisville over Michigan State, Texas, Creighton, a couple other schools, and Louisville came out of nowhere. He wasn't even considering Louisville throughout the whole process, and all of a sudden, as Rick Pitino likes to call it, that is the luckiest recruit that I've ever landed, and it just happened to have landed in my lap. And we're talking about $100,000 for a top 25 kid. Just imagine what they're throwing at the top 2, top 3 kids that can not only be program changers, but can also be future organization changers for the NBA. We could be talking $250,000 to $350,000 a kid just for a season.
College will be starting pretty soon. Normally right around November area and things of that nature. So, give me your top 5 college players to watch this season.
Easily Marvin Bagley. I got to start there. I can't start nowhere else. That's easily a future 10-time NBA All-Star right there. I mean, and that's right off the bat. That's without even thinking about it. Miles Bridges of Michigan State, I think, is another one.
Do you think he stayed too long? Do you think he should have come out already?
He's just sophomore now.
It just depends on really what you're trying to go after. I look at it like this when it comes down to kids leaving or not leaving. Are we talking about leaving to be a productive player on an NBA roster? What I do is I would just sit down with my kid and say, hey, you know, according to where you would get picked. Because after that 3 years is up, you can get sent down to that overpopulated G League that they got and never be heard from again. So how can we keep you in the league? And if to come back to school is the best thing for you to be able to improve your game, in which I like to think that playing under Tom Izzo, you can kind of put your game, I mean, you can kind of structure your game and get it together, whatever that, you know, you maybe wasn't as good at. You can kind of work on those things. I think that that's a good reason to come back, whether you go to a Final Four, maybe win a national championship, whatever the case may be. Now, of course, that's benefiting Izzo probably a little bit more than anybody, but being able to work on your own game and depending on what your own personal things are that you want to accomplish in a season, I think is another reason to come back. Like I said, Alonzo Trier, I do like, I definitely like Colin Sexton for sure. Michael Porter Jr. is another one. I mean, there's some really good kids. Oh, Trayvon Duval, easily Trayvon Duval. I mean, between the inside-outside game, I think that Trayvon Duval can potentially, not saying he will or won't, but he can be a Kyrie Irving.
He got to get a shot, though.
He does have to get a jump shot, but I think we can probably say that about every single kid that's 17, 18 years old stepping onto a campus. However, I will say enough to say that he's NBA ready. He has an NBA body, and he does, you know, he has some things that he needs to work on, but I think what Trayvon Duval will be at Duke is what everybody was expecting.
The NBA notables, we got the OKC, Big Three. We got Houston with Chris Paul and Harden. And my main man, Ryan Anderson, over there shooting them threes. Shout out to Ryan Anderson.
Got me 30 with Fed.
I be trying to tell y'all, man.
Got me 30 with something for
D-Will, you know I like my man.
Yeah, that's your boy.
That's my man.
That's your boy.
That's my boy.
I had him on my DraftKings last night.
Exactly. And then you got the possible repeat. Golden State, Kyrie goes to Boston. LeBron loads up, you know, at Cleveland. Some of the notables, Washington says, don't forget about us. The Minnesota Timberwolves say, hey, we loaded over here, and Cat Towns looks like he is possibly the best big man in the league right now.
Barkley say he's going to be the best player in the league in the next 5 years.
So,
Who is this?
Barkley.
Yeah. Well, we're not going to really pay attention.
Hey, man, give Barkley his props, man.
Yeah.
One team that hasn't been mentioned.
The Lakers.
Nope. The Milwaukee Bucks.
Jason Kidd.
I mean, I wouldn't be surprised if not only the Milwaukee Bucks finish better in the playoffs or entering the playoffs and have a better seed than the Toronto Raptors, but how much would it really surprise anybody if they jump the Wizards? Maybe.
Well, they jumping the Celtics right now, 56-50.
Well, and you see what I'm saying? And from that standpoint, we might be looking at second in the East. I think after Cleveland, with what happened with the Celtics already yesterday, and although I don't believe that the Celtics should just automatically be counted out because they lost a guy who never even played in that system or for that was his first time putting on that uniform. And I tell you what, there's a guy named Jason Tatum that looked pretty good last night too. He still got
in that second half, he looked good.
He gonna need some work,
really
as will all the rookies. But he's got the right people around him and the right coach, the right scheme, the right players, the right all-stars, superstars around him to be able to put that in place. And so I don't want to count out Boston just yet. However, I will say that Milwaukee is really just that. Keeping from being out-coached away from, I think that's their biggest issue, is just being out-coached. Yeah, they got the length. A lot is going to rely on Jabari Parker and a couple other guys, but they do have the pieces right there, and they do have the chemistry. But I just don't see nobody messing with the Warriors. Forget last night. Throw that out.
They didn't finish the game. LeBron looked phenomenal, of course, but JR is unhappy. Tristan is unhappy. I mean, Kevin Love got to move. He was told he had to play some.
Not LeBron. At practice.
This is what you're going to do.
This is what you're going to do.
How would you feel? What you think about that?
I mean, from a standpoint of Kevin Love, first of all, who you cannot really rely on to do much of anything except to throw long touchdown passes to guys for easy layups. I don't think Derrick Rose looks as bad. I mean, for a guy who I always thought, with everything that he's been through, because going through what he went through will change your game. It will have you thinking that before you even make a move, what might happen next. And when you start playing like that, I was always questioning who is Derrick Rose, not necessarily from a talent or athleticism standpoint, but from a mental standpoint and how will he play. But to have a guy that you need to fill the role when Isaiah is not there yet, I think he's done so far so good a phenomenal job. However, you've only seen one game in the regular season and a whole bunch of preseason games. But it's going to take time no matter what. I think the easier part for them from an optimistic and positive standpoint is LeBron and Wade and what Cleveland has in general, besides the fact that they have the chemistry together. But all those guys, they know what it takes to win. And I think that they're going to introduce Derrick Rose to some stuff to where maybe he doesn't have to have as much on his mental because he's around guys that say, hey, not necessarily take a play off, but take your load off a little bit. You can't do that with nobody else. You can do that with winners like LeBron. You can do that with winners like Wade. So I think that that'll help a little bit. And in this instance where you do have a little bit of an older roster. I don't think you necessarily have an old roster, but you have an older roster, and I think that could play benefits to you. However, that sounds good for the East. When you run up on some of those West Coast teams, I think we might be having a little bit of a different conversation, especially if we're talking about getting back to the finals. But everything matters a lot when you have winners on your team. And LeBron, what are we talking about, 7 or 8 straight finals?
Yep.
If you got him on your team, anything's possible.
Yeah. Shout out to DeShaun Tate for coming through. We really appreciate it, man. It catches up on some college basketball and some NBA. Shout out to all the loyal listeners. Shout out to everybody on Facebook Live. Shout out to the intern coming through tonight. She's rocking and rolling with us. And she repping that Alabama too. So I know that's why she's standing over there by D. Will. She's repping that Alabama.
You already know.
Sports Roundtable. Who? SRT Crew. SR.